Navi Pillay, how sure can you be of your conclusions when you didn't have access to the crime scene and Israel didn't cooperate with your investigation?
Yes, no, I'm confident over our findings because it was so painstakingly and carefully done and over 2 years. People asked us this morning at press conferences, so-and-so has come out with it first and so, and why only now? Well, we knew what we were doing, we were very careful. I have my previous involvement in the Rwanda tribunal, so I know what the standards are and where and what we should look for to establish the genocidal intent. So I'm confident. Obviously, we would have benefited from talking to victims on all sides in Israel, but we were not allowed in. Amazingly, the evidence came out to us from many people. So I'm happy to say we had the cooperation of victims and academics and doctors who shared information with us.
Can you explain, when your findings say Israeli forces have been killing Palestinians and destroying the population in part, why that constitutes one of the tests of genocide rather than, as Israel claims, people who were just killed in the process of trying to target Hamas?
Right. So, once again, Krishnan, I have to say there's a 80-page report. It's difficult for me to summarize that for you. We looked at the test that the ICJ uses, and that is only reasonable inference that can be drawn, that it's not an act looking for vengeance against Hamas or excesses by the soldiers or military objectives. So we examine all that, and then we say that, for instance, the direct killing of children, the number of children is the largest number anyway in previous conflicts. The number of women who were sexually abused, for instance, the number of journalists who were killed, the numbers in this particular case do count. And they could not have been the victims of indiscriminate killings or accidental killings. So we're very careful to see whether the only reasonable inference is intentional killing. Many issues and areas we've highlighted, but if you take the standalone and the only fertility clinic in Gaza, which had like 1,500 embryos in there, and there's no military objective in finding that standalone building, attacking in particular, targeting the nitrogen tanks that kept the embryos alive. They smashed the tanks, killed those embryos. So what military objective does that serve? And so we draw an inference from such an act.
Yes, now Benjamin Netanyahu has said, if we were doing genocide, they'd all be dead. The key point on genocide is it doesn't have to be the whole population, does it?
That's right. That's right. The words are very clear in the statute, in whole or in part, as such. So it's a group, an identifiable group on racial, ethnic, religious grounds, for instance, and whatever other motives there. I've often heard this defense. I was a judge on the Rwanda tribunal as to, well, if that was the case, we would have killed them all. So actually all that will be tested in the ICJ when they file their documents in the South Africa case. But I could tell them now that doesn't take you anywhere, because we look at facts and who were killed, not what crimes could have been committed. Such an explanation that we didn't kill all of them, for instance, doesn't detract from the fact that you had an intention to wipe out a part of them.
Now, you have very clearly found intent, genocidal intent. What is that based on?
We first begin with the facts. In our case, in coming to this report, it's a 2-year investigation. We investigated, we verified, and we did our own investigation. We did not rely on anyone else's reports. We heard from live witnesses. We got a lot of live testimony. We held oral hearings here in Geneva, and also some time ago in Jordan and other places. We particularly benefited from the evidence given by doctors, especially doctors who came from foreign countries and volunteered to serve in these hospitals, who have no motive to exaggerate or lie. And the evidence is moving on the direct targeting of attacks on children, for instance, where the shots were on the front, on the forehead and the chest, not on the limbs. All this is very important. And for other crimes listed under the genocide conventions, such as the withdrawal of medication, water, food, all the life's essentials. These doctors experienced and saw that, and it was very moving to hear them. We also have a great deal of video testimony, digital evidence. We cooperated with all the experts inside the United Nations. So we, for instance, had their satellite footage. We have a military expert guiding us in our own team. So all I can say is we were as thorough as we could be. But I agree with you. The ideal would have been for us to investigate, talk to everyone in Israel. You see, this is why we were unable to pinpoint where the rape occurred on the victims of the Hamas kidnappers. And similarly, the extent of sexual violence suffered by detainees. We did see footage, and it was terrible to watch, the reproductive violence on women. So all this will be made available when there's a court case.
Now, what do you make of the Israeli reaction? They have often attacked you in the past, and they have again said that you are a proxy for Hamas, that the Commission has a record of anti-Semitic and deeply biased comments. What is your answer to that?
My answer to that is I expect them to read the report and challenge the facts. Which facts are wrong, false, falsified? Do tell us, what is it that you are disputing? So instead of addressing that issue, they indulge in name calling. They've always done this, but one can never get used to that kind of thing. I want, in my defense, say, I was never called anti-Semitic until I became chair of this commission. I was never called anti-Semitic in my 6-year term as High Commissioner for Human Rights, in which period I was invited by the Israeli government to lead a mission into Israel, and it was very successful because, being who I am, I went to Serodot and talked with Israelis who were the victims of all that bombs and missiles being fired from Gaza into those camps. And I saw how frightened the children were by that experience. So we went all over. I was able to see from the president down to politicians. It was a privilege to meet with the Chief Justice, to whom I asked, I just read in the paper that one of your judgments on the wall, that the wall is encroaching on Palestinian land, is still there. The wall is still there. How do you feel when your judgment is not implemented? And that Chief Justice, was a woman then, said they don't know when their judgments are not being carried out until it comes on appeal. I'm just saying that was the level of that visit. because again and again they said they invited me because I had shown a sense of balance, which I could as High Commissioner. Balance must not be misunderstood when constantly they raise, what about Hamas? What about the Hamas attack? We were the first to condemn the Hamas attacks. On October 10th, we issued a full statement where we said Hamas had committed war crimes, crimes against humanity, and must be investigated, prosecuted, and punished for what they've done. Now, so we can't, when we're dealing with reproductive violence, for instance, keep bringing in Hamas, because it's totally artificial for us to view the two sides as equal parties. They are not equal parties. You have the occupier on one side and the occupied.
One of their criticisms is that they claim that you have taken uncorroborated evidence, that you've just taken the word of one person and not checked it and put it into your report. Is that true?
It's true we followed the test that the ICJ has, which is drawing a reasonable inference, the only reasonable inference. I am, of course, a judge from South Africa. I was a judge on the Rwanda Tribunal and the International Criminal Court. These are all criminal jurisdictions. Clearly there, the standard of proof is much higher. The ICC will, the prosecutor will have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So I agree this is a lower standard, and that's why we were extra careful about ensuring that we personally investigate and verify everything. You know, that's the best we could do because we were not allowed into the country.
And what do you want the world to do with this report now? What should Britain do?
The Genocide Convention is so clear. Every state, and all states are parties to the Genocide Convention. You know, I wish we could be at time and I could read all those words, the emphasis on how serious the crime of genocide is, that no country should tolerate it. No, and that's why there's a legal obligation on every state to take steps to prevent genocide, to punish people who commit genocide, and to protect against genocide. This is why the Security Council has set up a special representative of the Secretary General to report on genocide wherever it occurs. The ICJ has the clearest statement when they issued the provisional order for protection against genocide. They ordered Israel to ensure that genocide is prevented. Now, you asked me about the responsibility of other states. So the legal responsibility on every state to prevent and punish. And this is why so many states have intervened in that application brought by South Africa against Israel. States have intervened, the Western states, in order to participate. So maybe they will have reasons on why they didn't intervene. Bottom line is that the convention requires every state to intervene and protect against genocide. We clearly then place the responsibility on states to take action.
The British government is saying that only the International Court of Justice can declare this as genocide. Is that right?
Well, so can the International Criminal Court, which is a criminal court, higher standard. You know, Krishnan, I always, until recently, until I worked on this, was firmly of the view. Why? Because I was a judge. I participated in the world's first genocide judgment. And maybe I was being a bit protective. I always felt that only a court of law can determine whether genocide has occurred, because they hear from all sides, they hear evidence which is subject to cross-examination in their presence, and they could probably inspect sites and so on. So very extremely thorough testing. So I also believe that nobody should use genocide. It's a very loose term used by the media. It's a sensational term as NGOs look upon it. And then as I became chair here, over many years, I rethought this thing. And what struck me is, how can we expect states to prevent genocide and punish genocide if they wait for ICJ to make that final determination? And now we're guided by the court, which speaks about a plausible risk that genocide is happening. So I can see now that the intention of the Genocide Convention is rather to prevent genocide, not to wait till it happens and then to react to it. It's too serious a situation if we cling to that thought. So maybe I was personally being very elitist, thinking you just wait till the judges decide this. It is possible for a proper investigation to be done, because how would states prevent genocide? How would they punish genocide? Well, they will do it if they're alerted to the risk of genocide. Then they take steps beforehand.
Now that you have raised the alarm and you have alerted those states, if they carry on as they are now, and when you look at the statements of the United States and President Trump, and what is going on in Sudan and elsewhere in the world, does international law right now have any real standing in the world?
Like all people in the world, I also share the concerns. I agree what people are saying. These are the worst times. It's a worst time for multilateralism. It's a worst time for observance of international law and justice. And mainly because of what's happening in the United States, you wonder why they still call themselves a democracy when there is an autocrat single-handedly making decisions there. So this is what is frightening people. In my lifetime, and I'm pretty old now, I have seen things go up and down. I did not believe that apartheid in my country will end in my lifetime. But it happened because of the alertness of people. Civil society's push for respect for values, principles, and equality and protection of people's rights. And so, although we face hurdles at current, I'm confident the world has always moved forward. The international community has always looked for solutions. This is why we have so many institutions that we can access, where people don't receive justice in their own countries, for instance. I think that civil society activism and their collective action must be supported by governments.
And what happens now to the Commission and to you? Do you step down?
Well, I do. I've stepped down already with effect from 3rd November because we have an obligation to complete this year's work. The final item is our report to the General Assembly, where we plan to include a summary of this report in our report to the General Assembly. And then I am done. The President of the Human Rights Council, with the help of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, will appoint new members of this for this panel. So it's a work of the Human Rights Council, and from what I've heard, holding meetings here, it will happen sooner than later. I gave valid reasons why I want to step down. I had already indicated when I started that I mean to stay for 2 years. This is the 5th year. So my official letter to the president says it's for the reasons of age and medical issues.
And as you step down, many people describe this as an age of impunity. Is that what you think we're living in?
Oh, there have been many ages of impunity. We suffered with impunity in apartheid South Africa. You have to fight for your rights. You have to stand up for your rights each time. And you don't sit back and wait for somebody else to do it. These are lessons we learned in struggle in South Africa. And it's happening in very many countries. I see these street marches in support of Palestine in various parts of the world. And the numbers on the street, including in my own country, are such a signal to how people feel about this genocide, that's being conducted openly in our eyes. We watch it in real time on our TV screens, and they find this is totally unacceptable. They are appalled by lack of action on the part of the hierarchy in the United Nations, and they're appalled by lack of action towards a ceasefire from other states.
Navi Pillay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.